Hello and welcome to the first Alteryx data prep solution. So this time we're tackling Alteryx Weekly Challenge number 197, and it's all about a store and where its customers are in relation to it basically, and we're trying to do some reporting on that. So our desired output that we're trying to find is basically to make this table within a PDF, and it's got our different customer segments and how many customers are in a certain radius, customer density, and that sort of thing. So if we go into Alteryx, then we'll see that our initial input files, we have two of them this week. So we've got one file that just has the store and its location, and one for the customers. So each row is a customer, what customer segment they are, and where they are located. So whenever I see just a latitude and longitude, I immediately say, well, let's bring in a create points tool from the spatial ribbon at the top. And with the spatial tools, we always need to have a browse tool, which my favorite way to do that is a Control-Shift-B. That was one of the first things I learned about Alteryx, and I thought it was super cool. So if we go on the browse tool here, we can see, look, we've got that 1 point for our store there. Now, if you're working offline, you won't have a map behind it, and that is a big tip for me as well, because as I was just trying to record this video, I realized that I couldn't understand why I didn't have a background here. And also, if you have no base map selected, that can be an issue as well. So just check those couple of things if you're having trouble seeing exactly this view. So then the fact that we are wanting to be working with different radii suggests that we're going to need some kind of trade area. So within the trade area tool, we just set up our trade area from our radius from our store. So we've got 5, and that's miles there. And when we set this up, then we can see that we get a nice circle around that store. We're also going to set up an 8-mile one and then cut out that 5-mile from the 8-mile so that we get our two different types. In the requirements of the challenge, it wanted us to have, first of all, our customers in the 5-mile radius, and then those outside of that in the 5 to 8-mile. So if I show you what I mean a little bit more here, then we've got our 5-mile radius is this circle, and then our 8-mile radius is then this larger circle, and then I've just done the 5 to 8 miles, so just cut out that middle bit using a spatial process tool, and it's pretty self-explanatory here that we're just cutting the first from the second. Later on in the output, you'll notice that we need to know the square mile of each of these shapes that I've just created. So I've also used a spatial info tool and just used the square miles from there. And it's at this point in a select tool that I realized I really need to start renaming some of these fields because I'm not going to know what I'm talking about. So I've just got the original sort of store and its latitude, longitude, the point itself, the 5-mile trade area, the 5 to 8-mile trade area, and then just the area in square miles for each of those trade areas. So that's all the prep that you need to do for the first file, which just takes our store location and means that we now have some more information about it so we can join up with our customers basically. So I'm only going to go through the top bit here rather than going through it twice because they're literally the same. I realize I probably could have done it in a more efficient way, but like I say, I try and do my first solution as the one that I record a video for. So, if you remember, we have all of our customer locations. We're just going to create a point for each of those as well. So we can see they're scattered all around. If we just look down here at the scaling of the map, then that's about 6 miles. So we're definitely going to be excluding some customers in this analysis. If we're focusing on the 0 to 5-mile customers, so we're going to use a spatial match tool to find those and join them together. So in our target, that's coming from our store, so that's our 5-mile radius that we're selecting here. We're selecting from the universe input. Maybe I should just zoom in on that a little bit so you can see the different target and universe inputs there. So the universe is the centroid, the point that was created for each of the customers basically. If I go on that input there, this is that field there. It's just created from the latitude and the longitude. And the way that we're going to join these two different streams together is where the target intersects the universe. So that just means that our big circle that we have, all the points are going to be within that big circle, our 5-mile radius circle. So if we see that here, then we can see that all of those customers are within. So that's doing what we want it to do, basically. I know I said that I'd leave the other stream, but just to show you that it also works when we've got more of a donut shape and in exactly the same way. So now that we've got all of our customers who are within a 5-mile radius, what we want to do to get to our output is we want to know the number of customers so that we can calculate this customer density, which is number of customers over area in square miles. So to do that, we're going to group by our customer segment, because that's what we want the final output to look like. We're also going to keep this area in square miles number that we calculated earlier, and we can see that's just the same no matter what row we're in. So that will just be one number repeated. And then our label here is, we're just going to use that to count the number of rows. We could use any field for that, but we just want to count how many rows there are, basically. Sorry. And so then we get a little bit closer to what we want our table to look like. You'll notice that at the moment our customer segment is just sorted alphabetically, but if we go back to our output, then we see that actually it's in descending order of the number of customers. So we just do a little bit of quick sorting there to make it match our desired output, and then we go on to calculate that customer density, and we have that here, which is great. We also want to have the radius size as a column because that's in our desired output. So we just create that as well as a vString. Now we're using a select tool to do a bit of tidying up. So we're just going to rename that count that we did earlier of the number of customers to a more sensible name. We're going to change that area in square miles. Basically in the desired output, it's only got one decimal place. It's 78.7. rather than what we had before, which is a long string of numbers. So we're just going to round it basically by changing it to a fixed decimal. We could also do that using a round function in a formula tool, but I just thought this would be quicker. And I've just renamed that to be area in square miles. And then I've got a second select tool here because initially I didn't know with how it gets formatted in a table. Sometimes it was rounding it, sometimes it was right aligning it instead of left aligning it. I thought that this would help initially, so I made everything a string because it doesn't really matter, just for display purposes. So I thought because it was left aligning here, that would be good enough to make it left align when I created a table out of it. But that didn't really work so well. But I'll show you how I go around that as well. So basically the table tool is one of the reporting tools if you haven't used it before, which I hadn't. We're just going to keep it in basic mode because that seemed to work. The table width is going to be the whole of the page because that's kind of what it looks like in the desired output. We're going to have the column heading showing because that's what it looks like in the desired output. We want all of these columns basically. So this was the stage that I was at before, and I didn't know why my table wasn't looking the way I wanted it to. But if we click on one of the columns, now we can actually start to play with it. We could rename it within here. We can say what width we want it to be. But the most useful thing here was the alignment, because a lot of these columns are right aligning when I was originally making this table, but we can change it to be left aligning, and that obviously will look much nicer. So we check in our browse tool if that looks the way we want it to. Yep, that looks pretty good to me. And then the only thing left to do is to output that. So the way you do that as a PDF is using a render tool. So I'm just storing it as a temporary PDF document, but that's fine. Having it, yes, that's the only field that there is as a table. Basically, I didn't really have to do a lot other than change the paper size to be A4 because that's what it looks like in the output. So when I run that, then I see this nice little link here to be able to open what I've just made, and there you go. that is exactly what it looks like in the desired output, and I'm pretty happy with that. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you again next week.